Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. We took a trip out to some remote land near Red Oak, Oklahoma when I was still a kid. My uncle was thinking about buying property in the area, and my parents and I decided to tag along to check it out. It was a long drive, but none of us minded. We liked car rides, and it gave us something to do. When we arrived, I remember thinking how empty the place felt. There weren't any homes nearby, barely any signs of people at all. Just some birds and trees that didn't seem very welcoming. My uncle mentioned he wanted the land for hunting. That never interested me. Still, we got out and began walking through the woods. The weather was fine, but there was something strange in the air. We all noticed it. A heavy stillness, like we weren't alone. My dad and uncle made jokes, but my mom couldn't shake the feeling. She kept glancing behind her, rubbing her arms like she was cold. Her unease was starting to get to me too. Not far into the trees, we found something odd. A small red building, like a shed, stood tucked between the trees. It looked solid and clean, way too nice to be just abandoned. My uncle said it wasn't listed with the property. The door hung open. Inside, there were empty cans, a dirty blanket, and a stench that made me gag. It smelled like something rotten had been trapped in there for days. We decided it was time to leave. If someone was living out there, we didn't want to meet them. The problem was we had wandered too far. The woods looked the same in every direction, and none of us were sure where we had come from. That creepy feeling only got worse. It felt like something was nearby, watching. After walking what felt like another mile, we found the road again, but we were farther down than where we had left the car. No big deal. We started walking along the edge, planning to follow it back. Then we saw something that stopped us cold. Right in the center of the road was a cat. Gray fur, completely engulfed in flames. Not moving. Just burning. There was no one around, no noise, no clue how it happened. It was fresh too. That cat hadn't been there long. We bolted. When we reached the car, our hearts dropped. The side of it had been scratched deeply, from the front hood to the trunk. Blood was smeared along the panels. My dad checked for other damage. Thankfully, the engine started right up. We got out of there fast. Even thinking back on it makes my stomach turn. It's one of the creepiest things I've ever experienced. My uncle never bought that land, of course. Over the years, we turned the story into something of a family legend, the kind you laugh about during holidays. But something about it always felt unfinished. Last night, I was watching some episodes of BuzzFeed Unsolved. They covered the disappearance of the Jameson family. A mother, father, and daughter who vanished in the same area we visited. They were looking at land too. That was years after our trip, but the location and circumstances sent a chill through me. The video mentioned rumors about cult activity and even referenced dead cats found nearby. Maybe it was a coincidence. Probably. But maybe we stumbled into something we were never meant to see. Whether it was a hermit, a cult, or something worse, I'm just glad we got out. My fiancé and I were desperate to move out of his parents' place, and our budget was tight. We went straight to Craigslist, hoping to find something cheap. That's where we found a basement suite listed for a price that seemed too good to be true. It had its own bedroom, a bathroom, and a walk-in closet. The rent was low, and 2 other girls were also interested in renting it out. We met them, did background checks on each other, and decided to move in. At first, things were fine. We decorated together, threw a small celebration, and everything felt like a fresh start. We were all around the same age, except one of the girls was younger and had a cat with her. The cat wasn't fixed, and she kept locking it out of her room. It would cry constantly, pacing the hallway like it was begging for someone to care. As time passed, the younger girl began to neglect the cat. The litter box stayed filthy, and she often forgot to feed it. I couldn't watch the poor thing suffer, so I started feeding and cleaning up after it. But once I stepped in, she stopped buying food and litter entirely. I kept covering the costs because no one else would. Her behavior didn't stop with the cat. She left food rotting on the counter, raw chicken in the fridge uncovered, dishes piling in the sink. Whenever anyone asked her to clean up, she'd snap and become nasty. I cleaned up after her more times than I care to admit, mostly because I couldn't live in that filth. I wanted to be able to invite people over without embarrassment. Then one day, our other roommate vanished without a word. No warning, no message. Just gone. That left my fiancé and me stuck with the girl who refused to clean, take care of her cat, or pay bills on time. We were desperate, so we brought in another roommate to help with rent. That's when things got even worse. Clothes started disappearing. The laundry room in the basement always had random stuff lying around. At first, I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but over time, it became clear that things were going missing more often. I started avoiding the upstairs completely. We bought a microwave and lived off canned food just to avoid her area. The girl began locking her cat in the mudroom all day. We'd hear it crying from behind the door, scratching to get out. The smell of waste became overwhelming. I gave up trying to clean it and just shut the door, pretending I didn't hear the animal's constant pleas. Eventually, a storm knocked out the power, and the basement flooded. Our space became unlivable, so we stayed with his parents for a while. A maintenance worker came to fix the pump, and we thought things were back to normal. But when we asked to see the utility bills, we found out they hadn't been paid in months. We were hundreds of dollars behind, even though we'd been giving her money all along. That was the last straw. We started packing and contacted the landlord to explain everything. He was horrified when he came to inspect the place. Shortly after that, the girl disappeared. No warning, no apology. Just gone. When I returned to finish packing, the heat in the basement was suffocating. I heard the cat again. She had been locked in the mudroom for days without food or water. I opened the door, and the animal stumbled out, thin and desperate. I broke down crying. How could anyone be so cruel? The landlord and I were now working together. I received a message from the girl saying she had gone to Florida and that her boyfriend would come for the cat. He never showed. Days passed. I called a local rescue group and arranged for the cat to be picked up. That's when I discovered she had also left behind a kitten. While my fiancé was at work, I cleaned everything. I didn't stop until the place was spotless. But there was one door we hadn't opened. Her bedroom. Eventually, the landlord and I decided to go inside. It was a disaster. Trash, clothes, food scattered everywhere. We found a pipe she had stolen, along with other items that belonged to former roommates. But the most disturbing thing was on the wall. She had drawn images of all of us hanging from nooses on a chalkboard wall, right next to a list of the debts she owed. Her art was surprisingly detailed. And absolutely horrifying. We left immediately. In the end, the landlord evicted her. The cats were saved. And we never heard from her again. It was a normal afternoon in my quiet suburban neighborhood. My wife asked me to run to the store for something she needed. I was sitting in the dining room, which is right next to the garage. Instead of walking through the front door and around to the driveway, I just stepped into the garage and hit the button to open the door. As the garage door slowly began to rise, I ducked under it to head to my car. But the second I stepped outside, I froze. Standing just a few feet away in my driveway were two strangers, a large man and a large woman. I blinked, caught off guard, and probably muttered a quick greeting out of reflex. Before I could really process anything, I noticed something strange. The woman wasn't looking at me. She was staring down at a baby in her arms. Only it wasn't a real baby. It was plastic. A toy. She was rocking it gently, whispering for it to hush. The man, on the other hand, stared right at me and asked if I could give him a ride to the store. I told him I couldn't, even though that's exactly where I was headed. His face turned red with what looked like frustration. The woman never glanced up once. I stepped around them, climbed into my car, and locked the doors. I hit the garage button on my visor, watching as the door slowly came down. The man just stood there, glaring through my windshield. I called my wife and told her what had just happened. I asked her to lock all the doors and windows in case anything strange happened while I was gone. She told me not to worry and still asked me to go grab the items she needed. The store wasn't far. I got in and out quickly, trying not to think too hard about the odd encounter. But on my way back, I saw them again. They were walking along the sidewalk, still close to my neighborhood. The woman still hadn't lifted her eyes from the fake baby. The man spotted my car, and his reaction was immediate. He looked furious. He stepped into the street, trying to stop me. I swerved around him and kept driving. When I got home, my wife called the non-emergency line to report the situation. They said they'd send a patrol car through the area to check it out. I never saw those two people again. To this day, I don't know who they were or what they really wanted. Maybe they were just looking for help. Maybe they had mental issues and didn't mean any harm. But the way they showed up out of nowhere and how the man stared at me like that, it was too unsettling to ignore. If they had approached differently, maybe I would have helped. But something about the entire thing just didn't sit right. My girlfriend and I had already tackled a few sections of the Appalachian Trail before we decided to try the southern stretch through Virginia. That part runs deep through the George Washington and Jefferson National Forests, winding across rough, remote terrain from Roanoke County to Giles. Fewer people hike this route, which was exactly what we were looking for. We packed our gear and started near the Virginia Creeper Trail, planning to finish in Damascus. The weather was perfect. The leaves had turned that rich orange and gold, the air was cool, and the trail was quiet. Most of the hike went smoothly. It was peaceful, just the way we liked it. But toward the final stretch, things took a dark turn. You're supposed to camp directly on the trail or use designated shelters. We weren't fans of running into strangers in the night, so we veered off and found a secluded clearing. It was the perfect spot. We cooked a quick meal, talked under the stars, and crawled into the tent to sleep. Sometime deep into the night, my girlfriend shook me awake. She whispered that someone was walking around the tent. She thought she'd heard a blade or some metal scraping along the outside. I always bring both my Judge and my 1911 on hikes, just in case. I grabbed one and sat frozen, listening. At first, there was only the wind brushing through the trees. Then I heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, pacing just beyond the tent. The sound was too even to be an animal. I slipped out quietly with my flashlight in hand, careful not to alert whoever was out there that I was already outside. I stood in the dark, letting my eyes adjust. The fire had long since burned out, and only the moon lit the woods. When I finally switched on the light, I caught a glimpse of someone ducking behind a tree. I yelled, warned them I was armed, and kept my light trained in that direction. Then, to my right, I heard running. Heavy steps crashing through the brush. Another one sprinted off from the original spot. There was no way I was chasing them into the trees. I returned to the tent and told my girlfriend what happened. I sat outside with my gun in hand for the rest of the night. Just before sunrise, I found a boot print in the soft dirt near our tent. It didn't match either of ours. I didn't tell her about it. We picked up our pace that day, hiking longer and harder than usual. By evening, I found a campsite tucked beneath a rocky overhang, where no one could sneak up from behind. I gave her the 1911 and kept the Judge next to me. We barely spoke. The tension hung heavy between us. That night, I stayed awake again, listening. But exhaustion finally got the better of me, and I dozed off. I woke suddenly to rustling and the sound of someone rummaging through our things. I reached for my gun and shook my girlfriend awake. I could see a shape moving outside the tent, backlit by the low glow of the fire. I shouted that we were armed and told them to leave. They ran. When I stepped out, our gear was scattered everywhere. They'd been digging through it for who knows how long. I checked the edge of the woods and spotted a small trail near a creek. Down that path, I saw the flicker of a lantern. Then more lights appeared. 3 of them. I told my girlfriend to pack fast. We were leaving right then. We grabbed what we could carry, left the tent behind, and got back on the trail in the dark. The whole time, we heard movement in the trees, hushed voices, the snap of branches. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting someone to be right behind us. Just before dawn, as the faintest light crept through the trees, I turned a corner and looked back. Someone was standing in the middle of the trail, far behind us, just watching. I called out, asked who they were. No answer. They turned and walked silently into the woods. We didn't stop until we reached the end of the trail. When we got to her car, we were dirty, exhausted, and more relieved than we'd ever been. I don't know what those people wanted, or how many of them there were. Maybe it was a group playing a sick game. Maybe it was something worse. Whatever it was, I won't be going back to find out. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.